Can everybody see the agenda that I've shared on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so let's call this Community Redevelopment Agency workshop together. Let the record show it is October the 7th, Wednesday at 5:08 p.m. Madam Clerk, if I can get you to call the roll, please.
Gary Paytow,
Here.
Samuel Hall,
Here.
Jeffrey Jones,
Here.
Francis Pawlowski,
Here?
and Art Graham.
I'm here. Well, guys, I apologize. I'm not quite sure what happened with the audio. I actually had to call back on a different number, and that one worked. We have 2 items on our agenda today for discussion. Want to let you guys know before we get into it, Bill Mann's going to have to leave early because he's got personal issues. I think it's his son's birthday, and I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to leave today at 6 o'clock. So, Francis, if you could take over after 6 o'clock, if for some reason we're still going, I'd appreciate it.
That's fine.
All right, discussion items. The first one is the CRA program manager. I'm sorry,
That's not right.
program manager.
Now, we've got a PowerPoint on that Chandra's got for us on the internal and external. Well, the good news is the City Council approved the pay plan last night, and isn't government wonderful the way it works? I have to say the human resources person, Karen Nelson, has been absolutely fantastic. She walked me through the process, which I'm happy to report to you. Bill Mann is to have a series of questions in place, and if all goes well, this position should be posted this week in YouGov.com, a special thing that is available to post all job postings in the government for this particular position. We're also given her information to post it with the Florida Redevelopment Association and the Florida Economic Development Committee Council as well. So it'll be in those 3 places. It will be out for an approximately 30 days max. I'm not sure exactly what Karen finally decided upon that. I said no more than 30 days. They will immediately start vetting applications that come in. There are a couple of requirements that are very important. Any veteran must be interviewed that applies, and this is being advertised nationally to make sure it works. The plan then would be in November, about a month from now or less. The vetted applications would be in and ready to go for interviews so that a final person could be presented to you the first part of January. I have to say, Karen is an extremely great human resources professional, and the city is glad to have her. The difficult, and she also had to be the one responsible for approving the final job description and putting it in the correct format for the city. And they've had that for a while. Government moves slow, but at least progress is being made.
Can I make a brief correction of that? Jim, our,
Hey.
our HR director is Ann Muse.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Karen Nelson is our assistant city manager, though, and together
Karen Nelson is the person I started this process with. You are so
Karen
correct.
used to be our HR director. I just want to make that minor
Thank you.
correction for the record.
I started this process with Karen trying to figure it out. Then we went to Ann Muse. Thank
Exactly.
you. Ann Muse and Karen Nelson are first-class professionals. Let me say that about them. They know their business and how to do it correctly.
And Bill, I don't know if you want to add the detail about the slight wording that was changed because CRA administrator is not an actual position that exists right now.
Oh, that's, yeah, let me tell the board about that. When we had the several edits that the agency recommended when we reviewed the job description, one of them that you wanted to remove the planning and development director reference in terms of the immediate supervisor. Factually, though, we cannot leave it just to wording saying that the CRA administrator would be the direct supervisor, because the CRA administrator position does not exist within our pay plan. So if and when down the road that CRA administrator or CRA executive director position comes up, we will amend the pay plan, and that reference will be made that the program manager would report directly to the CRA administrator. But right now we had to leave that in as planning and development director because that's how our pay plan is currently structured. So I just wanted to let y'all know that.
May I make a request that if anyone's not on, that they mute themselves? I'm hearing lots of feedback on my end.
Jim, you still have the floor.
Chandra, would you pull up the first PowerPoint, please? The first sheet on our PowerPoint?
It's not showing it to you. Hold on.
Nope.
Sorry. I had it pulled up.
Sorry. There you go.
Okay, just go to the first page, please, if you would. There you go. I wanted to start by informing you and telling you about a couple of things before we get into the external communications recommendations. The first thing that you're going to see on the sheet is the Southern Group. The Gilmore-Hagan Group merged with the Southern Group in Tallahassee, a statewide organization that has offices in every major metropolitan area of our state in order to expand our capacity. We have picked up 3 additional employees, which will give us greater capacity to serve all of our clients. And I wanted to let you know that. I invite you to look up the Southern Group online, but we're very, very happy to be a part of the Southern Group right now. The second thing I want to talk about is, before we get into this particular presentation, is that's the deliverables that are in there in terms of our contract. First off, the draft job description was done complete, and we're online to get that done. Nothing happens quick in government, but winning takes longer than losing, and that's underway. We're going to talk about the internal communication strategy today and the external communication strategy today. We have also completed the incentive toolbox, and we'd like to present that to you, Mr. Chair, and if we can, have that on the agenda for the next board meeting, because that's an extremely important part in terms of, in our mind, what has to be completed in our scope of services is taking that public-private partnership and incentive toolbox strategy and see what might apply, and working with Bill and the city to see what other development opportunities are live and what might be out there to make that work. The next thing that we do have to work, and I think we're beginning to do this today with some of Francis's comments about downtown, that we would want to move into the South Beach redevelopment area as well. Well, even though we're going to start that, you're going to start that planning process in January, we do want to talk about, at least now it would seem, some of the specific project programming needs that you have in mind as a result of reviewing the plan for downtown, and also build in South Beach as well. So that's what I want to mention to you. We got it all done, I think, except for that last part, and that's an important part. I know we're coming up on the holiday season, but we've got October, and I don't know, I assume you're going to have a meeting in November. We can work to get that done completely. And with that, I'd like to
Jim?
move into, yes.
Jim, I got a quick question to ask you.
Yes, sir.
Why is this first slide a picture of downtown Jacksonville and not Jacksonville Beach City Hall?
Well, that's a very good question. I can't
It was
give you an
a
answer to
pre-made
that.
slide.
The pre-made slide to get it as quickly as we could get it. Thank you, Taylor. And I'm not crazy about that picture either. It's been your
I didn't mean to
home.
interrupt you.
You know what I'd like to have a picture of is the new Whole Foods. I'm excited about going there. Okay. If you would, Chandra. The internal communication strategy recommendations address the CRA board and the city council, the CRA board and program manager, and CRA board and city departments. Next slide. These are recommendations as we go through this, and you can accept them, reject them, or change them. Let me be very clear. These are items that have worked in other places and are for your consideration. One recommendation is the city council should consider appointing a member to act as a liaison and a point of contract for inquiries to the CRA and to the city council. Next slide. Program manager will be the first point of contact. Program manager will work closely with the board chair and administrator to create agendas for meetings and training sessions. CR staff will give short monthly briefings to the board on items the city council is reviewing that may impact the CRA. The CRA staff will submit brief written summaries monthly to the city council on CRA board activities. The CRA staff may give quarterly presentations to the city council. Thanks, Chandra. Kate, briefings will continue. This next part we think is all these points we think are important. At each monthly board meeting, there will be a representative from one of the city departments to provide an oral briefing on activities that impact the CRA. The examples are there, as you can see. Each department that has activities within the CRA areas will submit a monthly written status report to the CRA board. Each February, the CRA program manager and city finance department will organize a budget preparation process for the next fiscal year with the board. Each February, there will be a review of the CRA plans to determine any necessary amendments to program projects, as well as potential additional projects. Next slide. Oh, that's the internal. Any questions or comments about the internal strategy? I think some of the key points there are making sure you lock in a process where you're going to get these briefings from the department back to you and through the program manager that you're going to be engaging.
Jim, I got a question. I'm not quite sure it's necessary to have the different city departments before us monthly. Just as long as they're meeting with whoever.
I was saying don't have them all every month.
Rotate.
I may not have been clear about that. I was going to rotate them.
Just as long as they're meeting with the guy that we hire, our executive
That's
director,
fine.
or whatever you're calling that guy. I mean, that's all I really care about. I just want to know what's going on. I mean, if it's necessary to bring him in, then that's fine. But what I don't want to do is drag department heads in there that are just going to sit there while we run our meeting if there's no need.
Well,
for
that's
them
your
to be
choice. I think the suggestion is you have one per meeting to provide a report and then they go on their way. Not everybody all at the same time, just rotate them in and out. But that's perfect fine. That's your choice on that. Just a thought.
Well, that's just my opinion. I can't speak for the rest of the board. I just thought, I just hate to see somebody sitting in the audience that didn't need to be there.
That's a fair point.
Francis?
I'll second you, Art, as well. I did have a question about the liaison. I kind of felt this person was going to be that person. You had one bullet point in the beginning. Maybe I went too fast and I didn't completely get to read it, but it was my understanding that they would be the one in contact with all those people and they would give us an overview. And if they thought that they needed more backup information, they would invite those people in.
Francis, I think that's a great idea. This was intended to be comprehensive and for you to change it and make it work for you.
One thing on that though, Jim, Francis, Chandra, can you get back to the first slide? That's the council liaison. That's a liaison between the city council and the CRA, not city staff and the CRA. So there's a little bit difference, and the city department staffs don't necessarily reach out to city council on a regular basis.
So as this person we're hiring, this is one of their duties. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, this is the direction that the city council in their activities need to appoint an initial point of contact rather than the CRA just the chair going to a city council meeting. If at a meeting you come up with a directive or something you would like to discuss to city council, our first thing would be to reach out to this one person on city council that's a liaison, and they can bring it up to the next city council meeting. I think it makes sense to have a consistent go-to person on council. And I agree with Jim on this recommendation.
That makes sense. I get that now.
I don't think they necessarily need to participate in our meetings. In fact, if they're trying to enable the CRA as an independent group, I don't think they need to be at each council meeting. But it may be that city council says, hey, they direct their liaison, could you go to the next CRA meeting and relay what we've discussed tonight? Because with this virtual environment, they can hear all our meetings and watch them. We can hear all their meetings and watch them. So it's duplicative, but I think it's good to have a consistent, dedicated go-to person on council that you can be our conduit.
Bill, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, chime in on that point. We have interviewed, or that's not the right word. We've had conversations with the mayor and all the members of the city council, with one exception. We've been unable to schedule anything with Councilman Doherty. And let me say that every member of the city council and every one of you have said everything that we're talking about right now. Everybody is on the same page as to what you want to do, city council and you. But what we did learn is the same thing that you expressed as we began this exercise, there is a communication gap between the city council and you and the city council. So this recommendation was a ways and means to help address that. And of course, as also in this, the person that you hire will be a direct staff liaison to all the city departments and the city council as well.
That's the way I understood it.
Any other members have any questions so far?
Art,
Jeff?
Yes, I do. I was reading the candidate summaries on Beach's Watch this afternoon, and one of the questions they asked of each of them was regarding the amendments governing supermajority to eliminate or to remove the city manager. And one of them, it sounded like, was prohibiting any contact between city council members and city, or direction from city council members to city staff. And also the same rule would apply to board members and city staff. Everything was supposed to be funneled through the city manager under this amendment. Is that of any relevance or concern? Or am I reading it wrong? I didn't get a chance to look up the exact language of the amendment.
I can't answer that question because I haven't read the amendment either. That sounds a bit overreaching.
if I may, Art?
Gary, yeah?
You know, just to help clarify, and from what I understand in reference to that amendment, it correlates more with what the city charter already says, and that is that the CEO of the city manager, is responsible for staff. And any direction to staff has to come from the city manager, that city council or board members cannot direct city staff. We can meet with them and get information, but we can't direct them as to what to do in their daily responsibilities.
That is my understanding of it as well.
So we wouldn't be able to tell the program director to do this, that, or the other?
Well, I was going to say that sounds a little problematic to me, because this person is supposed to be working for the CRA. I mean, I guess maybe we would tell Bill Mann, and then he would tell that person what to do, or vice versa. There's a disconnect there, and I don't know legally what we need to do to fix that.
I'll look into that. I
If I
understand.
may, is that something that's being proposed to be on the ballot, or something that's in place, or what?
Proposed to be on the ballot.
Okay, thank you.
It is on the ballot, because I just sent my ballot in the other day, so it's there as one of the amendments.
Well, currently the way it reads, and I don't know what the amendment is, I haven't read it, but currently everything is supposed to go through the city manager. Elected officials aren't supposed to be reaching out to the general staff to have them, to give them direction, to tell them to do different things. That's all supposed to channel through the city manager. I mean, for the most part, the last city manager was fine with you talking to any of the other managers, just as long as the managers came and told them what was talked about, or you told them what you talked about. But, you know, they still wanted to have the open communication. So I don't know how this is going to change things. But Bill, if you would look into that, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, I will.
Hey, Art, I kind of, when I read it, just so you guys know why it didn't concern me too much, is since we're not elected on the board and we're appointed on the board, I took it more on lines that it didn't directly affect somebody that we are actually hiring to work with our board. So that's how I read it. But Bill, I would appreciate some kind of clarification as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, you still have the floor. Gary, did you have something?
I'm sorry, was that directed to me?
Yeah, did you have something else? I knew you were answering Jeff's question, but did you have something else?
The only comment I wanted to make is, you know, I thought the outline of these criteria is right on as far as I'm concerned. I'm appreciative of what Jim and Taylor have done, and you know, concur with the direction that this is going.
Okay. All right, Jim, mush on. You're muted.
Chandra, if you would move to external, there we go. And these program areas, relationship building, program management, economic development, redevelopment, marketing, and promotion. Next slide. I can read all this, but I'm going to sort of just tell you this whole section talks about the necessity of the program manager establishing and maintaining relationships with businesses, property owners, organizations, Beaches Watch, Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Vision Coalition, to make sure that that person is out there. It asked that the program manager prepare a list of all those people in the CRA areas and establish working relationships. We would, if this is acceptable to you, something we would begin to collect now so that that person doesn't have to do that. And while we didn't put it in there on a regular schedule, but that the program manager really must plan meetings with business owners and these other stakeholders to report and monitor outcomes of what's going on with the CRA initiatives. Next slide, please. Program managers got to make presentations on a regular basis to discuss the downtown and South End purposes, programs, and policies, and what you're doing. We think it's important for the staff to attend Florida Redevelopment Association meetings just as a way to share and participate and learn what other CRAs are doing. This next one is very important too. We heard this loud and clear from our conversations with you. And again, we didn't dictate exactly when and how often, but you know, we say regular tours of redevelopment areas to record maintenance issues, code violations, anything that's seen, and report violations that the business owners and residents may see that's occurring, and make sure that that person then works closely with Public Works and Parks and Recreation to address the issues. That's important in terms of just external communications and relationship building, because I can recall even walking around with Jeff, and I would think, Jeff, I considered you at that point being a CRA board member, but someone that lives in the neighborhood. And you could point something out, and that would be a part of this person's responsibility to go with you and others to identify those elements and get it back into the proper agency within the city to make sure they were corrected, and then report back to everyone that the job has been done. And I heard that, and this is not just downtown, Gary, this is also true in the South Beach area as well, with points that you've talked about. Next slide. Program manager, first line of contact for vendors and contractors, again, building on what's before, conducting maintenance and capital projects. I consider those contact for vendors and contractors an external relationship as opposed to an internal relationship, although they certainly go together. Now, I know Bill has started on this next one as well, responsible for completing a map of parcels available for development or redevelopment. I think Frances talked about that very eloquently in her comments in this next section, but this is for South Beach and downtown. And then the CRA staff is responsible for outreach to property owners and developers that may have an interest in doing something. And this would be relationship building externally, but then tying back to the planning department. Staff has to be versed in economic incentives available, and we really look forward in talking to you about the toolbox next time. Next slide. Marketing and promotion. I have to tell you that marketing and promotion, I know how to write this because I've seen it, but I don't know how to do it. I'll be the first to say that. But it is important to have a direct and coordinated marketing program for the CRA for your external audience. And your external audience is everyone that we talked about before, but more importantly, it's everyone. And it's the residents, the business owners, the tenants, to know exactly what's going on. And those marketing materials will have to be developed. And you've got the downtown branding and marketing sections from the business plan. Amended to redevelopment plan is needed to implement its goals. You've got a wayfinding signage plan. You've got an art plan. that's all about marketing and promotion. And this again is downtown and South Beach. And the program manager would work with the city's communication director to consider creating social media accounts. Everyone is doing Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm not sure how that works because I would depend upon my wonderful colleague, Taylor, to talk about how you twit Instagram and Facebook, because I'm not one of them. I like Facebook because it reminds me when your birthdays are, but that's about it. Next slide, please. And that's it. So I would go back to now the external communication recommendations for comments as we move through that document.
A quick question for you. And I don't know the answer to this, I'm just kind of, I guess, thinking out loud so the rest of the board can kind of chime in. What is this person's position interacting? Bill, we don't have Marilyn Matejcek doing downtown events anymore. I don't know who in the city handles that, but how would this person interact with that person?
That would be their contact with the special events coordinator with our Parks and Recreation Department, whose name escapes me.
Art, that's a great suggestion that we should add that to coordinate and strategically interact with the special events coordinator. We'll add that to this list. That's a great suggestion. If everyone else agrees to it, that's a good idea. Thank you for that.
One point in the wayfinding signage master plan, we did call for the design and location suggestion on a digital digital reader board sign that will list for pedestrians primarily, well, and for people driving on First Street, because you drive fairly slowly on First Street, but right in the vicinity of the west wall of the band shell, that just is basically a calendar of events, or, you know, if it's got holiday stuff like that, it could be incorporated. But that would be a high resolution digital message board sign that just lets people know what's coming up. So
I
just
think
being
that's great. Things we need to know and have on the list. Put
And
some
that
responsibility
was
down.
suggested.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. That was suggested specifically by our special events coordinator.
That's a good idea. We'll put that special events person in listed in here.
Well, I figure this guy that we're hiring should have the
lady.
pulse of everything, or man or woman, that should have the pulse of everything that's going on in the downtown area. So when something's going to happen, like there's going to be an event, they should be able to reach out to their network and let all the downtown people know, you know, this is what's going to happen. First Street's going to be closed, Second Street's going to be closed, Third Avenue's going to be closed, whatever the deal is. You know, that's why I was asking about that interaction between those two.
I will write up something and put that in there. Art, thank you very much for that. I'll add that in there in that section. That's very important. Thank you for that.
Any other board member? Well, everybody's happy. I like it.
We'll add that to that.
All right, Jim.
You're welcome. And I would also say that I think, Francis, you're becoming a community redevelopment planner. Your comments in this next section are very well thought out. With that, I'm going to mute myself.
Jim, Taylor, thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Okay, item B, consolidated downtown redevelopment plan. Francis, are you going to talk us through, you going to bring us through this, or
I
Bill,
can.
are you going to take us through this?
Hey, Bill.
Bill, you're muted.
I'm going to defer to Francis since she did all this excellent work in preparing the notebooks. I do have a couple of comments, not objections or criticisms along the way, but just a little input and maybe just a little slightly different point of view on how some of the policies were read. But they're limited to that first 2-page descriptive document, you know, your summary. They're limited to that. The rest of it, I think, speaks for itself.
Okay. And I appreciate that because it was a lot of material, and I do apologize to you guys for so much for such a short time frame, but I was trying to wrap my head around how the CRA is going to move forward. If we really do want to take the ball and actually be proactive, I think that we have to wrap our head around these different documents that affect us. So it may be a couple steps back. I thought it was important for us to see where things came from before we even talked about the plan. That's why I put the book together the way I did. My book has a lot more flags in it than yours, so hopefully I don't direct you guys, but I'm just going to walk through where I was when we were talking last week in regards to why I'm questioning how we're going to move forward, and we as a CRA should decide if we're going to move forward or ask the council to do joint meetings to create a new one. I will be the first one to say that I have been a person that says, we have a plan, we have a plan, we have a plan, let's get it implemented. Why are things not happening? I will fully admit that that has been me for the past 8 years. And I finally feel like after all this work, which Art, I really appreciate you getting the Gilmore group, or the Southern group now, involved. I did not have that network, and I appreciate it because the work with them and the work with the attorney has really helped me really get my head around it with the Shepherd group. So just to reiterate and kind of walk through the book for those of you guys, I did just a real quick summary what I said to you guys about those policies bills. You said there was a couple of them that I might have misunderstood, but when we get to that, you just mind just chiming in and telling me what it is specifically so I can get my head around it. So there are still, from what I read, there are still 4 corridors that are the meat of our downtown area. The first tab really truly was just the land code. I know we don't deal with the land code so much in the CRA, but the land code basically is saying, hey, there is a central business district. It references that there is lots of flexibility and that it references our comprehensive plan. That's really what those two, that whole point of that tab is. There's a lot more in there that we as a CRA don't need to know, but it's what the city of Jacksonville deals with. And those were the 2 parts that I personally thought we needed to at least know where it stemmed from. So unless you guys have questions on that, I'm going to move to the next tab. Did anyone have anything on that?
Nope, sorry. Just one point about the CBD zoning, and this is not a right or wrong. I'm just telling you experientially. I mean, I've been involved with the CRA in this position for several years, but for instance, the comment about how the Zenith Gallery came to existence. Well, Dix Height even recognized positively the existence of the Zenith Gallery in that corridor. And even though they stress residential development, they also acknowledged even within that corridor, it was going to be a mix of uses. And right now, again, it's not a positive or negative, but how that plan, how the CRA's involvement in the CBD district regulations is, that's what leads you to the RD rezonings. If a project exceeds 50,000 square feet, and this goes back to when we were not courting or not trying to shy away, both Home Depot and Lowe's, we came up with what we call the big box ordinance. And it set a threshold citywide that any project over 50,000 square feet could only be achieved through RD rezoning in the downtown district or PUD rezoning in the south end or elsewhere in the city. So to the go ahead, Jeff. Do you have a question?
Well, why don't you finish your thought and then.
Okay, yeah. So to date and historically, the extent to which the CRA has had involvement in determining whether projects are consistent with the redevelopment plan is when it's the scale of a project that exceeds that 50,000 square feet. Because the first stop for the RD rezoning is that they need to go through redevelopment agency to determine consistency with the plan. And I'm going to give you a specific point, which is the Pier Point condominium project. The Pier Point condominium project used to be our Ace Hardware. And that's a predominantly residential but mixed use project, and it anchors that 4th Avenue corridor. So the CRA was involved with that. The CRA supported that. So we do have that small, well, that's a fairly significant residential element. And the fact that everybody may have a different opinion that we did not back several years ago purchase the small apartment building across from there is because that's an existing establishment viable residential building, number one. Number two, we were way miles apart on what the agreed to price was. So that, I'm just telling you historically, that's the extent to which the CRA has been involved with review of development plans, whether it's in this corridor or anywhere in the CBD. It's when they trip that 50,000 square foot threshold. So the other issue is Dix Height came up with a set of design guidelines, and we have already incorporated the design guidelines that were Terracel Mary, that was not with Dix Height, that was formerly with Gladding Jackson when they prepared the vision plan. We actually incorporated detailed site design and lot layout standards that were prepared by that firm to replace our old CBD standards for that just said 0 front yard, 0 rear yard, 80% lot coverage. So those two elements have been incorporated, and they are in furtherance of the vision plan. But I just want you to put that in context of what you feel going forward we may have not done or have successfully done in the Avenue corridor. That was my only point.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Just so we have a common understanding, a lot of talk of corridors and then street, uses along a street, like First Street. What happens at the intersection? That new bar that's currently unoccupied, that's on First Street, and it's on the Pier corridor. What governs, or does it have to meet both, or is it the street address?
Well, as I said, currently, because it's way below that 50,000 square foot threshold, it's a permitted use in the central business district. It's marketed as a restaurant, not a bar, too, just so you'll know, because they had to get the seat count up in order to have 4 COP. But it falls underneath that threshold of the 50,000 square foot building. And at the time it was developed, it was not included in the Zenith Gallery property. They were independent properties. I don't know if that were all to be redeveloped today. I would imagine that entire block would exceed 50,000 square feet. So that would become a CRA opinable development project, but they just happen under existing zoning. And because it's part of the mix of uses in that corridor, I don't feel it's necessarily conflictive. I don't think the residential corridor means it's going to be nothing but residential down that block.
So Jeff, if I can interject as well, and maybe Bill can tell me if I'm not misunderstanding these documents. And this is why we're having this discussion, because we can't really move forward if we don't all have a full, firm understanding of it. It's my understanding that those corridors technically fall, and I will say up front, there was no official zoning. There was suggestions in the downtown area. I never found anything that said, yes, it must be this. It's just suggestions. And then all that land code and the comprehensive plan says we have all this flexibility. It's just suggestions. And there's a lot of people I've talked to who are adamant that it was zoned. I can't, and Bill, I could be wrong. I could be wrong that, but the suggestions I understand about those end caps or those corridors you're talking about, Jeff, it looks like it's suggested that they are either retail village or hotel use, not necessarily restaurant or commercial. So if it's retail, that should have qualified for what it's suggested in those corridors. And then at the end caps, those are supposed to, based off the suggested plan that we're supposed to go under,
Well, that's not good.
It's just you're frozen in time.
Sam, go ahead while we're waiting for Francis.
Yes, I think you pretty much addressed one of my concerns. I know once you get past that 50,000 square feet threshold, you're looking at a PUD, a planned urban development. That is outside of our purview then, and where do we go from there?
Okay, slight correction on that. In the downtown district, it's a redevelopment district zoning, and that's not outside of your purview. That's specifically down your alley. So that's when you do open up the redevelopment plan and say, wow, they're doing this significant level of redevelopment. How is it consistent or inconsistent with the downtown, with our adopted plan?
Okay, that clears it up. Thank you.
So if we have that 50,000 square foot threshold, and let's just say we have a corner lot that's bordering a retail commercial street and a mixed use or residential corridor, so we've got the over 50,000, so we need to address it. What governs that street or that street?
If you look in am I unmuted? I'm sorry. If you look in the central business district, the standards that were developed by the consultants that we incorporate into the downtown district, they designate streets as A streets, B streets, or pedestrian streets. And the different designation of the streets, and it's all the streets in the core downtown area that they called out. That dictates on that particular street what the treatment is. And it deals primarily, hey, if you're going to put a garage on an A street or a pedestrian street, you've got to have it. You've got to have the first floor cladded or camouflaged with leasable space at least 30 feet deep.
so I'm sorry, I don't know what I missed, guys, but
Oh, sorry.
I got back on.
Jeff was just asking.
All of a sudden,
Go ahead.
all of a sudden you're frozen, so welcome back.
It
Jeff,
wasn't
did
a
he answer
great
your question?
screenshot.
Jeff, did Bill answer your question?
I guess. So in other words, basically we just consider sounds like it's up to us or up to the developer to come up with the use, and it's not governed.
It's
By
still
one
within the
street or the
broad
other.
range of permitted uses in the CBD, but when it comes up to the CRA, if it's a project that has different street frontages, it has to go to the CRA, but still in the background, the CBD zoning will tell you, hey, this property is on a, and I can't tell you off the top of my head which streets are what, but First Street's a very sensitive street, so that's one of the streets that if you put a multi-story structure, and realistically, any multi-story structure going forward in the immediate future will have parking on it. It has to, because we have to preserve our background public access parking. So it's just telling you on those certain designated streets, you have to have this element on the first floor, but it doesn't tell you what you have to have on the upper floors. It doesn't say that commercial cladding needs to extend through floors 2 and 3. It may be that somebody says, hey, let's put some workforce housing on the second floor and third floor. And then you've got one building that's providing a mix of use. So.
Okay.
And then that was one of the reasons, sorry, I logged out for a second, but that was one of the reasons, Bill, when we were talking, I was just generalizing the discussion for today about the RD rezoning. I don't have a list. I couldn't find anything about what was rezoned when I was looking at the maps and what have you. And I know that it's that 50,000 foot thing, but I think us having that and understanding why, and I'm not against the museum per se, I'm just questioning how did it become, it doesn't fit the parameters that we have, what were the exceptions for and why did it happen? I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying it puts an unconforming lot amongst the village or the corridors that we're supposed to be following. So that's all I was saying with that. So when we were talking last week, the reason I focused on the 4th corridor through all of this so we can see how we're going to move forward is if you look at that map that I gave you guys at the very, very back that says what property we own and what property city owns, we really only own property on the Pier corridor now. So that's like the very, very last section of you guys' binders. It should be like the 3rd map I put in there. But there is, if I'm right, we only have property between 4th and 3rd north that is actually owned by the CRA. The rest of it is owned by the city. And I could be wrong with that. That's the only reason I really focused on that. So that's, and clearly we have to, if the city had their property and they chose to do something on it, it's my understanding that they would have to come to us to see if it qualifies for the plan that we're responsible for. And I wanted to see if any RD's rezoning was on any of those properties so we could plan ahead before something is proposed to us. And I know that it doesn't happen until after something's proposed, but I'm assuming things in the past have come up and other recommendations have come up and they didn't go through. And maybe something like that would help us see where the city may end up going to be a little bit more prepared. So that's why I mentioned the RD zoning. So I didn't understand, and that's also why I mentioned the museum. I didn't understand how, if we were following this plan with all these amendments, how they got there. And I get it. I just, as a group, I feel we need to understand that more.
Right.
So then tab 1 was land code. Tab 2 is a comprehensive plan, which I just wanted you guys to see that it references that we have a plan, a redevelopment plan, so you knew where it came from and the wording in that. And then 3 is the meat and potatoes as to what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So tab 3, I know you guys.
That's the green tab? That's the green tab?
Well, you all have different tabs because I just went and bought 8 packs and just did 444. But the 3rd tab, you know, I tried to put these together. After our meeting, I put them together and got them to your office by 10 the next day, Bill. Didn't even need help.
I was amazed. Is this the one that starts with Cliff Shepard's memo?
It's all Cliff Shepard, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, go ahead. I'm there.
So I did that and I didn't even ask my intern to help. Aren't you proud? So anyway, okay. So this 3rd tab, this is why I really wanted to talk to you guys. So if we hone in on the 4th or the Pier corridor, right? There was a tab in there that I had where it was gray and it explained how the old wording was. And we don't really have to go into that one. But if you go to page, okay, so it's vision plan, page 41. I think for you guys, it's the 2nd, maybe 3rd tab. I have a lot more tabs than you guys. I should have removed all mine, but it's the one where it's page 41 and it talks about the 4 corridors. We have the Gateway corridor, Civic corridor, Pier corridor, and the retail corridor. And we can look at the map later, but those are exactly the same color coding I did on those maps in the last tab. So like Jeff, when you look at that one, you can see that those end caps are technically in the retail village or the retail corridor, which is green. You can see that the residential corridor, that, you know, so you can see kind of some coordination with that. But on page 41, it describes the 4 corridors. They're in green. Green per his color code means it's still good to go. We don't look at the gray. We don't look at the blue and the purple. Wasn't the other color purple? I can't remember at this point. We look at green. That's all I remember. So
Red and yellow.
yeah, so we look at green. Maybe blue, because blue can be a gray line for us, but we can really look at green because it's 100% accurate, and blue can be discussed. So that being the case, this just describes what those corridors are. Like I said, I'm focusing strictly on the pier corridor because it's relating to the properties we currently own. And I know we've had discussions about buying more and what have you. But so page 43, there's those 3 specific points I mentioned in my little like summary of why I wanted to meet with you guys. So if we visualize and we as a CRA look at 12 through 19 as what the plan basically says we should consider in those areas based off the mandate we've been given, I don't know necessarily how we would do this with the current properties that don't qualify for this or got the RD rezoning done. I don't know if we as a group can make this happen. And that's why I'm questioning, do we need to have a discussion with with the city council about axing it, looking at all these properties that don't fit in this plan anymore and create a whole new one? Or if we as a CRA say, you know what, we have one, we're going to move forward. So let's just go through them real quick, right? So 12, it talks about parking on 4th Avenue North. That's been pretty much taken care of. We've got development and new pier parking. So I don't know if any of you guys remember Ken Marsh always showing that picture. Hey, there's a plan. We're supposed to have this beautiful, pier area. And I know you guys saw me get a little hot when it came down to them showing us designs. And I was like, it's not very creative and what have you. So that's really what it's talking about. It's talking about family-friendly action at the end of the pier. We can help direct that, but we don't own that property. The city owns it. So the city is the one that's going to direct what they want there. And we just get to say yay or nay because based off this plan. So that's something we as a group should discuss, how that's going to be addressed with the city, because they can do all the plans they want without consulting us until they present it to us and we say, yes, it fits or doesn't. So I'm not sure how we as a group feel about that. Do we want to talk about that now, or should I keep going, Bill?
Well, just one observation,
Well-
one small point. You can keep going, but one point on that. I do believe that recommendation for an active green space park right at the end of the 4th Avenue corridor was predicated on a land swap, either with Mr. Hyanides for that vacant sliver just south of Casa, or for Mr. Hyanides and the property that's got the Pier Cantina that's now going to be the Spring Hill Suites restaurant. I don't know if my predecessor reached out to try to negotiate that land swap. That's something I don't know about. But I do know that was part of it to get the critical mass to have a park setting. Because right now, the park setting could only take place within the limited 4th Avenue right-of-way, and that happens to be the main vehicular access to the pier. So
Right.
that's why Dix Heights going along with the existing framework of the parking lot versus, I think, what would have been an expanded area for development. That's
Right.
just my observation on that.
Okay. Yes, Art?
Francis, I think you're limiting yourself. My impression of what the city council wants us to do, what I thought our marching order is basically to control the downtown area. So it doesn't matter if it's CRA owned or if it's city owned. They're going to take our recommendation. I mean, that doesn't mean they have to approve it, but any projects that we want to propose before the city council, I don't think it matters. Just as long as it's government owned, it doesn't matter if it's owned by the city or the CRA.
So then how do we go about doing that process-wise? Because we as a CRA have never proposed use to the city for city property. Like we've never said, hey, city, we would like to commission some drawings. We would like to put some ideas in place and present it to you. how do we go about doing that as a group? And so we can decide if this is something we as a group want to move forward with to propose for next year, or you know, at least have on the capital improvements for the next 4 to 4 years. Like,
Right.
how do we go about
Well,
doing
we just finally got to the point where actually we're not even there yet. We've been reactive this entire time. We're trying to be proactive. And I think part of our proactivity is bringing on this program manager that was talking about. That program manager actually reaching out to, you know, either entertaining different developers coming in, you know, being pie in the sky, coming up with ideas that they'll come and bounce off to the board. And then we can come up with some kind of a public-private partnership or something else along those lines. We can kind of work out some of those details and approach the city council about that. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to get to. We're just not quite there yet.
So then, if I can extend that question out more, maybe for Ken, and you guys, I'm sorry, we're kind of having this debate, and you guys are there, but so moving forward then, Bill, so are we able to address our budget moving forward for us to do preliminary drawings for capital improvements we want to propose to the city who owns property?
Yes, ma'am. And this goes back to the succinct but very broad list of CRA powers that Denise May presented to the CRA while she was still of council with the city. That's one of the things you could do is commission studies. And we can try to get a range, and Jim probably has a good handle on the range of what kind of estimated prices we look at, and you get a consultant to come up with some concepts. Or I don't know, if you do an RFQ, that's a request for qualification. Sometimes those respondents will actually not do a full-blown plan, but they'll come up with hey, this is what you could do on this property. One thing in this whole discussion, and I don't mean to be disjointed, and I didn't hear it firsthand, but I was made aware that at the Beaches Watch Candidates Forum the other night, all of the candidates were asked if they supported or what their opinion was about the potential of revisiting building height downtown. And I've got to tell you, whether it's our CRA loan lots or the city lots, that is huge in terms of what you can do with those properties. The residential corridor, then Jeff's concerned about, well, if it's a residential corridor, but it says we got to put commercial on the first floor, that becomes moot if you've got a 4th and 5th floor above 2nd and 3rd floor parking that could be all, you know, housing, or apartments, condominiums, or whatnot. And I think that's key, and I've always said that. So just keep that in mind, that we could do a study based on what the current condition is now, or we get our new city council on, and it may be a topical subject for them early on. And I know who I'm speaking to when I say this too. So it's kind of coincidence. I just realized that. I'm like, oh yeah. But I think that's part of the conversation, and I wouldn't pull that plug too early until we get a read about what, and it's got to go to a vote of the people. It has to be a referendum vote to revisit that height gap. And if they say no, then at that point, it'd be appropriate to say, okay, we're at 3 stories. What realistically should we plan on being able to do at 3 stories? Does that make sense?
Yep. So here's what I would propose to the team, which is what we are. I would propose that we as a group decide to discuss how much money we want to add to our February discussions for budgeting for proposed capital projects that we want to tackle in the next 3 years. It may not be this one specifically, but or even find a reference if there's something already in the works. I know there's that vision plan, but I don't think there's actual contracts or bids out there for that pier. So I think we as a CRA should consider, is this one of the things that we add to our budget moving forward? So I'm just putting a mark on that so we can, as a group, I don't know if it's something we have to discuss now, but I know that we will be having, or whomever is on the council, on the membership, will have the ability to increase or discuss adding it to our budget in February, since it'll be the first time the CRA has a chance to do that. So I'm just putting that as a flag, something that I think we should consider. Where do we want to add money? So now that we know the process is, if we as a group want to move forward with a capital improvement recommendation on property that we don't own, the process is we have money on the budget so we can commission ideas and then we can present it to the council.
And
That's what I'm understanding from this discussion.
Just so you know, just as I don't mean to be the school marm on this.
You're good.
It's a separate line item. Capital projects or projects are identified for construction. There is a line item for professional services and consultant services. The professional services are Jim and Taylor. That would also be consultants doing site studies, massing studies, parking demand studies. That's in the professional services. It's only after we get a recommendation and we get a bunch of respondents who say, yeah, we like this project, then it's bid out, then it becomes a capital project. And it's a nomenclature thing, but I'm gonna start
Yeah, that's good. So it is professional services or consultant services, whichever it would fall under. I just think we as a group should consider that when we talk about budget going forward. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep moving because I know we have a time constraint, and I appreciate you all being patient with me because I really did try to wrap my head around this. And so I appreciate it. So we could just move down to, there's a whole bunch of them. Has the residential commercial development, that's relocate restrooms, that was done. Well, it says relocate them that are near the Casa Marina. I personally think that obviously would go hand in hand with whatever we recommend for that area if we choose to. And then it goes to this whole parking lot. So I don't know if you guys noticed, if you look at the other one, it says develop a public parking garage to serve beach users and the retail areas in that corridor. And then there's also introduce multi-use residential in that corridor, which, like you said, Pier Point has that. And then there's also introducing a roundabout, which I personally think our roundabouts are a joke, but that's beside the point. So, but make it to where it can calm the traffic. So there's a lot of ways you can calm the traffic by utilizing and redirecting cars. So those three things in the space that we have, which we've had multiple discussions on, I'm not quite sure how we as a group will want to move forward with that, or if we do. But if you visualize it, if you're like standing on 3rd Street looking towards the pier, we have the lot on the right-hand side, which is 4th and 2nd, which is the flat lot now with the police station, or police substation in it. We have the lot that's right across from that, which is itty bitty. And we have the right behind the Ritz. And we're the whole block could be ours. And we could fulfill a parking need, and we could fulfill the multi-mix residential, and we could feel like every one of those could be filled if we had that whole block or a big chunk of that block with this mandate. But the question is if I am on 3rd next to Jeff's place, do I want a big 3-story building next to the big Metropolitan, and does that fit with the whole idea of our downtown? So that's kind of where I was thinking. And the other last point before I open it up to you guys is if you look at the comprehensive plan, there is a section in there that I think needs to be reworded or addressed for us, because a lot of people I've talked to about the pier parking keep harping on how the wording is it's not as convenient if it's across the street. So that would be something we as a CRA would have to address too. Do we try to incorporate parking at whatever we do at the pier? Or can we convince people that moving across the street and providing safe passage across 1st Street by removing cars from it would be just as convenient? So that's why I wanted you guys to talk with me today, because I don't know where to move forward. Because if I look at this, I don't know how we're able to accomplish it unless, like Art, like you said, we come up with proposals for other parts of the area. Anybody else want to go?
Can I leave one comment
Yeah.
before? I'm sorry, Gary, but just because I've got to go. I think we need to do this for each corridor and then go back and look, okay, look, we think we've decimated each one of these plans enough that maybe we just need to come up with a new plan and use the elements that we haven't decimated. Or contrarily, we think that's still got enough teeth, and then maybe you want to consider revisiting the threshold at which new or redevelopment projects come to the CRA. That would simply require a land development code amendment just to drop the ceiling for what requires RD rezoning. And that manifest puts it under the CRA's guys as the initial development stop.
And I would agree with that, and I would hope that we would do that. And that's why I wanted to have the talk, because I personally would like to find out if the rest of the group thinks that what we have here, that we can visually see how we can move forward with it, because I know we all want to move forward. Now that we know there's going to be a process for us to implement and push ideas to council. Like those two things were in discord for many, many years now. So now that we know the process and how to propose moving forward on projects on land we own and not own, and now that we have this, I would like to know as a group, how do we move forward and what ones are we going to focus on first? That's what I would like ultimately at the end of this.
Okay, I'm gonna sign out at this point, and I
Okay.
think Art, you have to leave. I'll leave it to the chair. Just formally sign off the chairmanship to Francis if you do have to leave, Art. Thanks, y'all. And I've got this. I'll have the YouTube. So
Happy birthday to your
not
son.
leaving. I'm just leaving for now. I will hear this first thing in the morning when I get into work. So
All
y'all have a
right.
great night.
Bye, Bill. So Art.
Jeff has
before
got a
we-
question, but
Yeah.
I got to leave in about 6 or 7 minutes, but Jeff has got a question first.
Of the pier parking lot on this convenience issue, how many, is all of the parking there subject to that standard, or is it a certain number of spaces that have to be there to be convenient?
Bill's always said we had to keep the same amount, but if you look at the original plan, that we're obviously, my office building is where parking was supposed to be, so clearly my building is one of the ones that doesn't comply, but they were able to get quotes for a 2-story parking garage that held 400 parking spots. That's more than that's in that parking lot now. So even from back in the 80s, their plan had a 2-story garage that held more parking. So it was my understanding, that is the terminology in the comprehensive plan, that it's that wording of as convenient that might be a problem and pull back.
This is going to be my swan song because I do need to leave. But that work is not just in our comprehensive plan; it's with our continuing contract with the Corps of Engineers for beach renourishment. So it's a matter of looking at that language in different places. The intent is to not decrease the amount of beach access parking, because otherwise the Corps is not going to participate in renourishing our beach, because as much as it is for cladding, coastal hurricane cladding, it's for residential recreation. I mean, we're Jack's Beach. So the comp plan does not get as specific as many people do on both sides of that argument. Well, is it just as convenient across First Street? Yeah, I think it is. Would it be as convenient if we just placed First Street parking between 2nd and 3rd? No, I don't think it is. But just simply going across one street, I don't think that's any less accessible. That's my profession.
Have we
Well,
done
that
any
contract-
research on that, or has anybody done any research on that? Corps of Engineers requirements?
No, sir. And we also have it, I believe, in the coastal management element. We have it that we won't diminish it. And we actually came up with that policy in our comprehensive plan to support beach access for our residents and for visitors. And then I think the Corps just picked up on it and said, yeah, well, we want to include that as one of our mandates, but I don't know the specifics of that. We can look into it though.
Okay, because if we're limited to across the street, and I don't think, the parking garage and the Ritz lot, I don't think is a good idea. And if we rule that out, then to do anything with the pier parking lot, we have to have basically a first floor parking and then 2 floors above that.
Well, a first floor of parking, and because of our new standards, the first 30 feet of depth in that parking on the first floor has to be some type of commercial space. And then the 2nd and 3rd floors may be purely commercial. That may increase beach access parking at that location and may allow us or whoever at that point to decrease the amount of parking in the Ritz lot and put it out for commercial development.
But we're kind of hamstrung on what we can do with the pier parking lot property if it has to provide some parking.
Yes, sir. And you are, because that is one of our big sources of beach access parking. If you're going to relocate it, you can't relocate it too far away.
As convenient.
Yes, ma'am.
Are those things subject to negotiation with the Corps of Engineers?
I don't know. We'd have to look at it in the comprehensive plan first, and I think we would reach out when we do if an amendment to the comp plan is proposed to address that policy. I would think we would informally reach out to the Corps of Engineers to see if it compromises our ability for future beach renourishment. Because
Takes a lot of time when you're working with the feds on something like that. Keep that in mind, Jeff. I'm talking about
everybody knows
a lot of time.
All right, Bill, have a good dinner with your son. And I know, Art, you got to go too. So it's up to you how you want to move forward.
I think
this is great dialogue. I'm glad you put this together. My only concern, I guess the only thing I was going to say, and we're maybe just a hair premature. I think we need to make sure we get the guy on board that's going to be running the show for us. And I hate doing this, but you got the 3 hotels or the 3 big areas that are under construction right now. And well, Margaritaville is almost done. I mean, so we can check that one off. It's going to be done. We don't know what the hell's going on with the Spring Hill Suite, and we don't know what's going on with the old Dolphin Depot property. And so I think we need to get a better understanding, and maybe that comes down to dragging both those developers in to sit down and talk to us, because we're going to start making plans, but we need to know where they are rather than we're checking the market, we're doing this. I mean, so after we do that, I feel more comfortable pushing forward, like what you're talking about. But no, this is great information. I appreciate putting this together.
All right, Art, you have a good night. How do you pass the chair to me and then?
I'm officially handing you the gavel.
All right, appreciate it. I'll take it from you. Are those videos, right? Have a good night, Art. Jeff, you were still talking. Are you still at the floor? Are you good? So before I move to Gary?
Yeah, just a comment. I think one of the reasons we really haven't moved forward on the parking structure issue over the years, and this is both with the city council and with us, is it's hard to see a good solution because of the limitations we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been
kind of
kicking the issue down the road because we've got no great ideas or proposals.
Okay. Gary, you can go next, and then Sam, I'll get you after Gary.
Okay. I think we need to take a step back and let's really take a look at what the downtown needs. Right now, when you go downtown, there's so many empty storefronts down there. Obviously, the businesses are not operating or functioning the way they need to downtown in order to draw the businesses. They're going out of business is basically what it comes down to. Nobody wants to be downtown. The real important aspect of all of this is how are we going to get the foot traffic back downtown? What's going to generate the foot traffic, which will ultimately allow us to put the restaurants in? Because as a restaurant owner, I don't want to build down there right now because nobody goes down there. And that's evident with all these empty storefronts that we're seeing in restaurants that are going out of business. So we need to take a step back and we need to determine what's going to help generate the foot traffic down there, which will in turn allow us to put in a lot of the other uses that we've all been talking about. One of those uses may well be residential. If we put residential down there, particularly if it's near the beach, people will rent. And if we get people renting, then there's going to be a need for shops and restaurants and other things down there that will really start to attract further businesses into an area that we really want them.
So Gary,
we seem to get very specific about certain things, and I think we still need to step back and look at it in a little broader view right now, because we're going to miss it. I mean, just because we want something down there doesn't mean we're going to get it down there. Strategically, what I would do on 4th Avenue is let's take a look at that family clinic right on 3rd and 4th Avenue North. And let's see if we can purchase that piece of property. If we can purchase that piece of property along with the parking lot that we have, and then on the other side of 2nd, we've got another lot, there's something that we could really create in that corridor that would fulfill the vision that's in these documents that we've been talking about. But right now, we've got to think a little bit more broadly than specifics.
So can I ask you a question just to extend that out further, if you don't mind? So, so the Pure Point is residential, and they do have commercial use. And the original plan that we have, and it actually survived through this, was the idea of having affordable housing in the downtown area where people could work and live and not actually get in their cars. Now, one thing we don't have is the commercial. We have a lot of big companies down there right now, which they could work at, but there's no like neighborhood type places you'd want to walk to once you got home. So that being said, if we came up with we all agreed, as a hypothetical, we all agreed to buy some kind of property on that area to move forward with one of these residential multi-use type structures, what's going to make it different than the Pier Point where they're not able to keep their tenants in because their residents aren't using the services downstairs?
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of your comment.
So like the Pier Point, there's a lot
Yes.
of, places that they can rent. There's actual commercial and whatnot down below. So they cannot keep their tenants in there. And if the intent is we build residential space with places those residents want to travel to, it's already down there and it's not being utilized. So I don't know what is happening with that.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I agree with you on that, Francis. I mean, I don't know about Pier Point specifically.
So let's let Jeff talk since he knows.
So what we need to be doing is we need to be looking at what else is going to drive business downtown. Can we go, and you've heard me say this before, can we go to UNF and ask them about setting up and building some kind of a satellite campus in the downtown area that will bring students downtown, and then maybe even an older generation who wants to do continuing education classes and help bring that to the downtown area. There's got to be a catalyst that we create that will bring people into the downtown area. I was thinking residential might work, but you seem to have a little more knowledge than I about what's happening at Pier Point. So,
right. So Jeff, give us one. Jeff, will you tell us what you understand about what Pier Point then? So
when they did the condo documents for that, they put restrictions on business hours and usage for the retail space, so it wouldn't bother the units above. And it's virtually impossible for anything other than a small office to function.
That's what I've heard too. So there's the problem. So there's two things I want to address for the two of you guys. And this is just from my experience, and I'm not trying to speak for the group, but I'm just letting you know from what I've experienced and what I've learned over the years. So Jeff, I've heard the same thing about that area. It's very hard. They can't even keep a coffee shop because they make too much noise. So that is a problem. And that's part of the problem of us doing private partnerships, private public partnerships, because there's no way that we can make sure that the rules for those who are supposed to keep the community in the downtown area and the shops in the downtown area and open. I've asked asked the old city manager, and in the past we've talked about us being landlords, and I have been told point blank that we never want to be landlords. So then to me, what's the solution to bring in businesses if we're not in charge of being able to make sure those shops are opened at a reasonable rate so they stay full? I don't know the solution to that, but I think that is the only way if we are going to do a multi-use to have some kind of control over those rules to keep those stores open. So I will say that with you, Jeff, as far as that. For Gary, I don't remember you saying anything about the school. It's a neat idea to do something like that. But the problem with the big catalyst or big, what do they call them? Jim, you may be able to correct me, but I think they're called anchor stores or anchor development. So if you have the anchor development, like say the UNF bringing students downtown, whatnot, the problem is parking. So here we are again at the parking discussion. We have to discuss what are we going to bring? How are we going to supply parking for that draw and still keep it convenient for people who want to go surfing? And if we're looking at what we own now, the only thing we can do is that little strip on Ritz, unless we can convince the city by proposing something to them. So I'm good with that. I'm very happy to hear that we have a process to ask the city and what we're going forward. And I'm very happy it was verbally said that we should probably address increasing our budget so the people on CRA can say, hey, we're going to have these professional services going forward because we want to propose and do these drawings. So for those two, that's how I feel. I feel like we need to discuss, is it a catalyst that we're trying to look for and we're going to just the parking? Or is it going to be the residents, and how are we going to make sure that the multi-use aspect stays open? Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not sure I follow you on that because the whole discussion starts with trying to get an anchor group in there. And that just is the beginning of the discussions. Whether you need parking or not becomes part of those discussions. And then the decision becomes, is this something that the CRA develops, or is this something that you're going to force onto the developer or the anchor group to do? It's all part of a development agreement that needs to be structured and put together. You know, we're not even at the tip of the iceberg here to be able to discuss that at this point until we identify somebody that really is
So
an
Gary,
entity that we feel comfortable with, that we would like to have downtown.
we recently did go through this process with the museum. The museum, yes, it may not qualify underneath our purview, but it's there. It got that as rezoning. Okay, so it's there. We went through this process, I want to say 6 years ago, when he said, I will come, I will buy property, I will build these villages, and I will have these nice restaurants that require valet parking, because the kind of clientele that I'm going to bring to the downtown area will want us to valet them. I need a place to park them. It's that kind of developer and that kind of discussion that, for me, solidifies that you need to have parking as our infrastructure for whatever we choose to do. If we choose to do residential or choose to bring in an anchoring group. And that's what I think we as a group have to decide, what direction do we propose, because no big group is going to have the discussion. And if we know we want to go this route, logically, we know parking is going to be an issue. We know we have, so we need to have a pre-thought to what are we going to do to get there. So when they ask us, we have a plan before they get to that negotiation point. That's all I'm saying. So underneath that purview itself, and based off this plan, I agree we need to either buy property so we can make it more, buy property and make it happen. There's really no other way to put it. Or we need to say, you know what, we need to revamp this and go to somewhere else other than fourth corridor, to one of these other corridors, and propose it onto city's property. And to do that, we need to increase our budget. That's all I'm trying to get at. So I guess the first thing for us, and I don't know if Jim, you have any thoughts on this or not, but maybe from this point on, I mean, I can go through the rest of it, but I think that we are on to something. I think that we're on to the fact that we know we're going to have to increase our budget, but we have to hone in on what it is before February, guys. Like before February, we have to decide which direction we want to go and what corridor we want to go. So I don't know necessarily the right way to go through that process that you might be able to direct us on.
Francis, if I may, and I'm hearing, and you are correct, you need to have a robust professional services budget, period, to do many of the things you're talking about. Parking, land use studies, market demand. I'm listening to this today, and as I like to tell each of you and have told you, I don't do instant grits, but I'd like to process this and come back to you and recommend to you next week a list of potential professional consulting services that you could use. And maybe there's money, you could get started on it right away, or at least a process to get it started right away, so you don't have to wait. Because heard each of you say what I'm about to say. The market drives it all, and it's the public sector's ability in that redevelopment agency to help the market drive itself and provide the market the tools and incentives necessary to make it work. And I say that because when we talk about the incentive toolbox, you're going to see lots of strategies that come into play, and that's about parking and everything else. So land use, the studies are there. We got to come back and let's say make sure it works in terms of the market with the right type of professional consulting services that make it attractive for private sector capital investment. And that's what I'd like to think about and recommend to you some professional services that can help do that.
And you'll do that by next month? By next week?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So then I would like to,
I'll put it out there for conversation. I mean, this is
right.
This is a conversation but this is really necessary.
So I would like to put it out there to see what you guys think as far as, so this is one of the reasons I'm pushing this. So I heard from Art and I heard from Bill, and we've been dealing with this for a long time. Yes, it may be premature that I'm pushing this. It may be. but
It's
I've been
not.
pushing it for I've been pushing it for 8 years now. So to me, it's not. And what was that quote you said earlier? Oh, I wrote it down. I thought it was wonderful.
Winning takes time.
Government is slow, but progress is happening. Yeah.
I
So
think I'd always say it takes longer than losing, Jeff.
oh my God. Yeah, that was what, yeah, it takes, yeah. So anyway, this is what I would like and why I'm pushing this. If we hypothetically have someone finally working for the CRA in January, and we're supposed to have a discussion about our budget for 2022 in February, right?
You'll start the conversation, yes.
Right. I think we need to, as a group, at least hone in on what corridor we want to focus on and what aspects we want to focus on so that we can start getting those professional services ready to propose to city or ourselves, or purchase land to make those real. That's kind of my thought. Sam, your hand's up, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Oh,
see
yeah. What I'm have to say probably is not relevant anymore because we have several conversations since I had this thought. But if we're still looking at the Pier Corridor, well, it's pretty congested in there between the Ritz and the Tiki Bar. It's just that one parking lot. If we're looking at a parking garage, just by running past there, it seems like we may need to look at an alternative site other than the Pier Corridor for parking. Now, parking is very relevant. I mean, it's a topic that we need to discuss because it has always been an issue. But I'm just thinking for that particular location, we may need to look at an alternative corridor for that because it's kind of congested. That's just my observation.
I hear you on that. So I guess that gets us to the point of what I was bringing up. Do we follow this current plan that they now have confirmed or gone through with all these 8 amendments? Do we think that this Pier Door parameter we've been given, can we work with it? One, and if not, do we propose going to city council and saying, hey, or not just this Pier Corridor, but can we maybe redirect it to one of the other corridors if it says that we can do parking? Like there's some discussions on other corridors. You know what I mean? Like what exactly do we want to focus on? So maybe for me, I don't know how you guys feel about it. I know we're having a meeting. What was last? Like it's next month. I can doubt Bill will let us like have another workshop before that just because he's so swamped. But what would you guys say if we all had homework and we all found the area or the corridor that we individually would like to see a focus for bringing business downtown, be it school, be it be it residential, be it commercial. Like if we just hone in on the one space, regardless if we own the lot or not, but it's available per city or for us, where do we see our anchoring space and how do we want to focus on it? And we kind of present that at our meeting. Would you guys be willing to do that? Do you think that's something that's productive, or do you think it's something we should do as a group?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm not sure I followed what you're trying to get.
We got the 4 corridors: Gateway, Civic, Pier, and Retail. And if you look at page 41, and then it breaks down and just bullet points through 45, what we technically should be encouraging in each corridor, right? And there is flexibility in each one of them. So I'm saying, do we each then say, you know what, we know that we needed anchoring development. It can fall underneath a variety of different categories. But me personally, I think anchoring would be X and it would go in this corridor. And therefore I would propose we look at this. Or do you think we as a group need to pick one corridor before we say what we would do there? Sam, are you raising your hand?
No.
Okay.
That's a twitch.
I mean, I'm just asking how you guys want to move forward. That's really what I'm doing. Like I'm proposing.
That's just a twitch.
Yeah, I'm proposing a way to move forward. I may be jumping the gun, but like I said, to me, I'm not, because it's been 8 years in works, and I feel the deadline of February, because if we don't get in on the books within the first quarter, 2 quarters of the year, it's going to be another year after that. So me personally, I'm feeling the pressure to at least move it forward from today's meeting. Like we've had the meeting, we've had the discussion. I can show you one more thing in here that I want you guys about, but generally I feel like we as a group understand that these 4 pages out of this whole binder pretty much summarizes our focus, and we decide if it fits with what we want to do. And I don't know the next step that you guys want to know. Yes, Steph?
I think I feel that we can work with what we have. There's enough flexibility in there. And then I think it identifies the assets, the corridors. As far as the February thing, I don't see that should be such a limiting factor. We just have to generously budget or project what we might need.
Okay.
I think we've got some flexibility for it. That's just to get a placeholder in the budget so that we don't have to go back and get an amendment later or make a last minute change. So let's just focus on, I think, continue to move forward. I think we need to get the public-private contacts going, because to me, we only got basically the Latham Plaza and the Pier corridor that really have any available land and opportunities. But let's get the contacts going in higher gear to explore whether we can do the public-private.
Okay. I hear that. Yes, Jim?
Francis, I was going to say, I have to say that you have done a very important mission with what you've done, because one of the recommendations that we had talked to Bill about before you produced this work is that there needs to be some kind of workshop, what I call the green plan, if you will, or the green coded work in Shepard's presentation. Because that really is what you started to do for the CRA, to take and think about what that means and then how you decide your focus. And so I'm saying that's a great idea, and you to consider. I don't have a problem, right? It should be recommended to Bill that you have a special workshop, but that's all you talk about. We put the pictures up, we take a look at it, we get together in person again, that'd be even better. To workshop that green plan, because you've done a lot of the work on it right now for us to think about, to come to consideration for that. It's good stuff, and I will come up with suggestions on professional services that you need to have. So, and I had always thought that it should be done before the end of the year,
Right.
with the new person or not, because that will then, for downtown, that is the launching point, as you said, in determining what you want to do in the next fiscal year and beyond, and see what you can do in this fiscal year.
And I do think it would be good for us as a board to be at least focused before this new person comes on, so it's us that are directing them.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more.
So Jeff, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
There's talk of, well, maybe we should redo the plan and start over, or come up with a new document. That's a 2 or 3 year process.
I'm not necessarily for it. I'm asking the question, do we want to consider it, and can we work with this? I personally think we can work with it. I just want us to make sure we visualize it. And I personally didn't know how we would propose moving forward with these unless we redirected them to different corridors. So I personally think we can. I was just asking of the board. I can't say for the board, hey, we all think we need to do this. I need to see how everybody else felt, right? So I would agree with you, Jeff, that there are things here to work with, and we have flexibility. This is why I showed you guys the comprehensive plan. It gives us a wide range, and the fact I can't find any official zoning, just recommendations, and like Bill hasn't completely confirmed that with me yet, I think there's a lot of flexibility. So, okay, so guys, I know it's getting late, and I know that we're having lots of meetings, so I don't want to end it too soon either, because I know we need to address this with the south end as well. But I just want to make sure I understand what you guys are all saying and we're on the same page. So we're talking about, we all kind of heard that if we want to start initiating proposals, that we need to increase our professional services bucket when it comes time to discuss it. So we all kind of heard that. We have to decide on individually if we want to vote yay or nay on that and what we want to propose it to. I want to make sure we heard that. We all have the understanding that those 5 pages are super key to how we go forward. And I heard Gary say, and you too, Jeff, say that we have time to find out what it is. You just have to make sure we have the funds to do it. So I heard that. So I hear it loud and clear. I don't need to have a project before February.
Good.
I heard it, but I did want to make sure we all heard that if we want to do said project, we need money. Okay. Other than that, I think we need to decide how you guys want to move forward. Do we want to have workshops? Do we want to do during our meetings? Like, how do you guys want to move forward? What are you comfortable with? Crickets.
I don't see the difference between a workshop and a meeting. As far as, I don't think, well, unless Bill says we have an agenda that's too full to get into discussions like this, I think we can have the discussions at every meeting.
Okay.
And if we have a specific topic that we want to really delve into detail, like what we did tonight, then we can schedule a workshop. But I think it's great that we have these discussions and we can make it a part of every meeting, agenda permitting.
Okay, so what I would then propose is, since Art is the chair, I would, when he reads this, and I think we should propose it to him, that he make the decision each meeting to paste off the agenda. If we're going to be able, if we are able to discuss it during our normal meetings, and then we're fine continuing to the next meeting. But if we're unable to discuss some aspect of this during regular meetings, we then call a workshop 2 weeks later. I would feel like that would be the process that we go forward with.
Yeah, and I have no objection to having a meeting every week, but it's just that there's work that goes into having a productive workshop, and we're relying on people to do that work. So I think we want to make sure that we're making productive use of time.
I would agree with that. Gary, did you see your hand up?
Yeah, you did. One of the things I think we need to take a hard look at is not get hung up on the corridors, because the corridors were just a recommendation by a planning consultant. That was their thoughts as to how the city needs to get organized. But where is our best opportunity to do a true development within the city that makes sense, that brings us the foot traffic, allows businesses to survive, and brings the amenities to the downtown area that most of the residents are looking for? And it may well be that we really need to focus on that area to the south of Latham Plaza between First and Second, because that is a piece of property, and I assume it's city-owned, but the city has always said that they're ready to develop that piece of property. There could be a parking associated with it, along with retail and businesses and things like that, which would enliven that whole corridor down through there.
Isn't that
those are the things that?
That's the civic corridor, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think that property, and if I'm following it right, they're actually in the process of making a public-private offer or request out for that right now. I do believe they're in the process of that, but since we don't have a liaison, we don't know. So back to communication.
I don't think there's anything out on the street in reference to that. My conversations with Mike have been that it is an opportunity for the CRA to take a look at and to release an RFP on that piece of property and see what we get back. But we haven't done anything in reference to that. So I just don't want to get hung up on it. It's just being one corridor or another that we're looking at. We really need to look at the whole downtown area and determine what it is that makes the most sense. Because if we focus on one corridor, I'm not sure that we're really doing what we need to be doing to give us the benefit and the push that we really want for the downtown district. And just as a little bit of an aside, you might be interested, the city of Neptune Beach just released their final draft on their vision plan for Neptune Beach. It's kind of an interesting little document to go through. They spent some big dollars, over $400,000 to create this document. But take a look at it. It's online. You can go to City of Neptune Beach, and you can see this this document, and it's kind of interesting. It brings forth some interesting ideas. Of Question is, how did things get funded and you move these projects forward? Because you can have all the great ideas, but unless there's funding, it's not going anywhere.
Right. So I will just echo, I'm not an expert on this. I do agree with you that we do need to look at the whole picture. I agree with that. I will say though, from the very beginning, it was villages, then it was districts, and now it's corridors. Those have survived throughout the whole plan. Those are the purview and recommended uses and areas. So yes, I agree with you. We should look at the whole plan, and I'm not trying to focus on, but we do have to stay within those parameters that are for those corridors. So if we're going to talk about development in one of those areas.
But I'm not changing that, Francis. I'm not saying that you should vary from it. All I'm saying is look at where the right opportunity is for development. In the plan, in the vision plan, it calls for the development to the south side of Latham Plaza, mixed use parking. And so isn't that maybe a better place to start than over on the, the pure corridor?
100%. And that's what we're going to discuss as a group. And we just need to decide where we want to focus. That's 100% true. All right. So I think we've kind of beat this to a pulp. I'm happy about some of the things that we've discovered from it. Does anybody else have anything to discuss in regards to this specifically? Gary, I know we will address the South Beach area because I think we need to do this that way as well. But I also don't want to overstrain our brains. So for now, I think we should stay right here in the downtown. And then after we kind of get this moving, then we address maybe in the next month or after two of these like discussions on this, we can then start introducing the South End and where we want to extend our budget in that area and what kind of things we want to, because that plan is not quite the same as this one. It has a whole different layout. So if that's okay with you, I'd like to do that after we kind of get this one moving.
Well, I think one thing I need to let the board know is that, there's more to the South District than everybody's thinking. I sat down with Public Works the other day and with Bill, and there's $19 million worth of projects that Public Works put forth that is still left to be done down there in that area. That doesn't include the items that I had put together in the list that I created earlier in the year.
Right.
And not all of those monies, at least from what I've seen, is in the capital improvements budget. So we have some work to do down there. And it needs to be part of our agenda as we go forward, because we get to February, it's the same thing. We don't want to suddenly be, struggling to figure out what we need to do. We need to have the plan in place.
Did they by chance provide you with a detailed bullet point mandate or purview for us on that area? Or they're just basically giving us what's been done and what they've identified as projects? That's what they've done. It's more like a checkoff list than it is like parameters, what you can do in certain areas. That's my understanding of it, correct?
Yeah, it's more of a checklist is what it is, trying to get from your vision plan of that area and what had been completed and what hasn't been completed. That's the way.
Why don't we propose after we have the discussion with Art, since he's not here now. So let's have the discussion with Bill and Art at our next meeting to ask them if in our meetings that we don't have a lot of agenda items, that we spend, half our time on downtown and half of our time in the South Point, and just like switch gears, almost like switching hats, saying, we're going to talk about this for this long, and then we're going to talk about that for the next half of the meeting. And then
you might want to talk to Bill, because he did talk about having something on the agenda related to the South Beach District. And I'm not sure exactly, I think he was talking about having Ashley come in and talk about the numbers a little bit more. She was on our list to have it today, I thought, but we've been converting it. I agree with you. Ashley was supposed to be part of it.
Okay, it's almost 7. Does anybody else want to talk about anything else or propose anything else going forward? As far as I know, we're basically going to encourage having meetings, discuss these every meeting, and if we don't get to it, we're going to have a workshop 2 weeks after.
Right.
And that's pretty much the plan, right?
Right.
Okay. I thank you guys.
Okay.
Jim, did you want to close anything out? Taylor, you guys good?
Great conversation. great conversation.
All right.
Thanks for
You're moving.
good job, Francis. Thank you.
Let's not stop. Great conversation.
All right. Well, guys, I'm extremely excited. I can't even tell you guys, like I'm bubbling that there's progress, and I am hopeful. And that has been a word that has not been associated with me lately when it comes to the CRA. So I am so excited. I can't stand myself. So great job, team.
Okay.
I will see you guys soon.
See you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good night.
Good job,
Thank you.
Francis.
See you all.
All right, good night, y'all.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, Chandra.
You're welcome. Thank you.